what would be the most self-reliant country in the world? I don't know if there's many, but maybe some Hawaiian countries or something. But
I
even them, they're
think
probably importing a ton.
I think European Union is trying. Like some of the more
They're
advanced
trying.
countries in the Euro, like Scandinavian countries, are really
Yeah,
trying. Germany is trying to, but with issues, is trying to go fully renewable energy.
yeah,
But that does have some issues. I think they are a bit overboard with rejecting nuclear power completely, because the
yeah,
way it looks now is that like Czech and French nuclear power plants will be selling energy to balance the German grid in the near future.
yeah,
So if you have nuclear energy and but like all the rest is essentially renewable with some minor, like maybe you have some sort of backup oil plant or something like
yeah,
to just like when in the moment the grid is about to fail, it's just that you can
yeah.
just turn on for that
Turn it
amount of
on.
time. Then you balance like all of the, because like even in terms of just like the fossil fuel plants, something like gas or plant is much more efficient than coal plant. So even if you just did that, use that correctly,
Yeah,
you would just have to think about the like overall CO2 budgets in like the grand scheme of things. It just doesn't mean that you just won't be using anything CO2 emitting at all, because all human life is CO2 emitting. So you're
yeah.
clearly making some allowances for the just capacity that the planet can take. Which
Exactly.
yeah.
The grand goal is to just not use more than is being sucked up by the oceans and the trees and even us, if we can have technology that sucks it up, right? You just don't want to increase it
Which
anymore.
reminds me, they have just opened. It's been around the news. They've opened the CO2 sucking plant in Iceland. Have you
Oh,
seen
cool.
that?
I haven't seen that one yet. I'll look it up right after this.
Uh,
What is it based on? Is it just scrubbers kind of thing? They just scrub in the air?
yeah. It's like a big, like a really big plant for scrubbing the CO2 from the air. And I think part of the reason why it makes sense in like Iceland, I think, I'm not sure, but there were
Hmm.
implications that I guess it can be geothermal powered or something. Because like
Yeah,
that's
they
the
can use.
another factor is like if you need to expend energy to do like on the technologies that are filtering like the atmosphere or something, maybe you can
Yeah,
focus on using to power them like the some of the stuff that's going to be happening anyway that you can tap
yeah.
energy from.
Wouldn't that be really interesting if you could get enough geothermal energy from Iceland to suck up, the entire world's carbon footprint or something crazy like that?
That would
That'd be
be.
fun.
I think it's still the technology is limited. It's still better
Yeah,
than like a whole bunch of trees being planted.
sure.
So I guess you can also plant a whole bunch more trees. There's just a limit with trees. There's a limit of like how much you can reforest,
Yeah.
and still be able to grow enough food.
One of the craziest ideas I had, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, or I read about one time, was them cutting a huge hydro canal through the Panama Canal. And then just because the ocean tides are constantly going back and forth
Right.
from the moon, right? It's essentially moon energy. So if you had just a huge, huge hydro plant right through the middle, all the way through, I think it's about 50 miles long, but you could make it as big or as thick as you want, essentially, right? And then for 12 hours a day, the water goes through one way, and then the other 12, it just pushes through the other way. And you just have as much energy as you want, essentially, the entire ocean worth of energy, if you make it deep enough. And it's a huge, probably $1 trillion project to do something like that. But it's essentially infinite energy if you do it right,
Well,
with
you're extracting something. I think in that case, you're extracting momentum or something that you would be
yeah,
like slowing down the planet or doing something. I have heard about tidal, and of course, like part,
yeah.
it definitely makes sense for to make it a part of some like any kind of strategy
It's yeah,
to
it's
some
definitely interesting
extent, because
concept.
you can do
You are
smaller
slowing the
tidal
Earth. You're right.
projects.
Yeah, it is. It's tidal. It's global rotational energy of the moon, essentially. So you would be taking a small percentage of that. But I don't know if it would be like the size of the ocean is just so huge. The amount of energy you'd be pulling out
It's
would be
just
more than enough to power the world for thousands and thousands of years,
yeah, I
probably.
would just object to infinite. It's not
Yeah,
it's not
nothing's
infinite
infinite.
technically
Good point.
speaking.
Correct,
But
correct. It's not a
at
free energy machine.
at this point it's
Yeah,
about like the powering the transition. So I
yeah,
think the issue there is that if you have to do a mega project, that mega project would emit a lot of CO2 in the short term.
yeah,
So there's usually with all of these solutions, there's some like, but you need to think about that there are some implications of trying to do something to fix it. So the less energy you can expend to do a solution, like the better solution it is in on
yeah,
balance. At least in the, because what you especially don't want maybe is like a ton of extra emissions
No,
in
it's a
the
good
short
point.
term necessarily, even though it would balance out theoretically over or get into a like a plus to like get into where you want it to go, like
Yeah.
negating the CO2 later, which is why I think it just needs to be like what needs to be pushed are those CO2 scrubbing technologies to make
Yep.
them more economical, because currently you could do it already, like the technology exists and does what it's supposed to do. It just currently it's so expensive that it would cost, I don't know, like $1 trillion a year or something
Well,
something crazy.
you absolutely need a worldwide, global carbon market. So for every ton of CO2 they're pulling out, they're getting whatever, $100 a ton, or in Canada, I think it's $170 Canadian per ton by 2030. Right now, it's about 40 a ton, and it's ratcheting up $15 a year. And the Canadian Liberal government just won the election. I don't know if you followed any of the Canadian
No.
politics. Just a couple days ago, we just had another big national election that was called because of COVID vaccines and things like that, mostly because the Conservatives were against having these vaccine passports,
Hmm.
and Canada wanted to make sure the restricted travel. The Liberal Party wanted to restrict travel unless you had a vaccine passport. So that was one of the big reasons an election was called, and they won a minority government again, but it still was a big thing for them to hold on. So they were the big environmental push. If they would have lost that election, it would have probably set us back a decade in environmental things. They probably would have scrapped the carbon tax and a bunch of other environmental initiatives that liberals have been pushing hard over the last decade. So it was a good win. I was pretty happy about it. But we'll see where it goes. Again, we don't want to talk too much politics here, but
Yeah.
we'd like to be anti-partisan. But it's nice when you can see environmental initiatives moving forward for sure. We definitely want to focus on
No,
anything
like
that pushes the whole world together that way.
yes, you will always be ultimately for something or against something, no matter how broad you make it. Like humanists generally must be for continued human existence on planet Earth.
Yeah,
So anybody who's so
exactly.
crazy that they essentially align themselves against future human survival, that's you kind of have to draw a line at that. Instead of doesn't
Yes.
matter like what they're calling their party or like what side they're on. It's just a bit
Yeah.
of a problem. Recently,
Yeah.
I've seen recently a good video from Kurzgesagt. Do you know Kurzgesagt? In a
No.
nutshell, now it's a great YouTube channel, like educational YouTube channel, and they do animations about various kinds of things, often about environmental issues, but scientific issues in general. And they've just recently did one about like what it will actually take to solve climate change, or like what that means even.
Hmm.
And one of the interesting numbers was that it's not really that much about what like individual people can do, because right now or lately, when during the pandemic, the hardest lockdown, like for a year essentially or globally, only decreased the emissions, even though like nobody was traveling anywhere, and massively cut back on all kinds of consumer activities.
Yeah.
It just eliminated like 7%, which is like okay, it's
Yeah.
not nothing, but like
Something,
there's
but
whole industries that are multiple times that. And one of
yeah.
those I think they've mentioned that I haven't heard mentioned of often is cement.
Yep.
Just making
That's
of
huge.
cement is like 35% or 30%, something crazy, of all
Yeah.
of the emissions.
Yeah, they're working on a kind of green cement to combat that as well. That's kind of if they can make cement by first scrubbing the CO2 out and using the CO2, putting it into the limestone and kind of trapping it in the cement, then they can kind of counteract the effect of making the cement a bit. But again, it's expensive. It'll only be profitable if we had a worldwide carbon market, and they're being paid to put the carbon into the cement. So there's potential there for sure. It's just I think the first step is getting that global carbon market in place and well regulated and well agreed upon, on a worldwide level. We've got maybe close to half the countries in the world have some kind of carbon market, but they're all so different and varied, and there's so many, ups and downs with all of them that it's hard for them to really, especially for global corporations, to really capitalize on it when they're when they're having business in so many different areas. So we just need a worldwide law on that. And I think that would move us so much further forward than anything else that we could talk about on an individual level.
Yeah, it's in principle it should be doable, because in smaller scale issues like exactly like this, has been figured out in the past, like the freon industry, which is the
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't ever remember the English
The
term for it. It's like
the ozone layer. That was one of
yeah,
the biggest
so
successes. I mentioned
that's
that in my book as well,
that's
as
one
far
of yeah,
as the whole world coming together. That was the Montreal Protocol
yeah.
actually happened in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
so
was a
so
good
that
one.
like completely worked and even like
Yeah.
healed the ozone layer, demonstrably healed. So that's like
Yeah.
if you can, this proof you can definitely do global initiative of that kind, and the
Yeah.
industries won't like it that at that time exploit it, but still, if since you have to do it,
Yeah.
you just have to do it. The other one was lead regulation. I know like United States
Yeah.
are a bit behind, but most countries in the world, in the Western world especially, have really banned lead from households, from like paint and other
Yeah.
stuff. So there's just no lead toxicity in most parts of the world
Exactly. Yeah.
because of it.
Yeah. I think the what's the other heating one that causes it was used in all the insulation and heating. I
Oh,
can't remember what name now.
what's it
Um,
called?
I don't know. I can think of it now. It's funny. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking
It's
about.
the poisonous. I just had to have some taken out of one of the rental properties we were in about a year or two ago. Can't believe I can't think of it now. It's funny. Oh well, but yeah, there's definitely been a lot of success with the worldwide regulations, with worldwide understanding of a problem, scientifically understanding it as a problem, and then making a solution to it, through governmental regulations. So we just have to build on all of that. This is definitely probably 10 times, maybe 50 times bigger than a lot of those with the carbon market. That's why I think it's a little slower on the uptake. But we've been kind of building the science for 50 years now. I think it's pretty much well understood by anybody who's not, part of the problem. Let's just say. So it's just a matter of getting enough votes and getting enough power, I guess, with the UN somehow. So that as part of their SDGs, as part of their goals for climate action, we get some kind of worldwide agreement on a bindable cost, a bindable target for all of these things. I see, but the part of with the ozone layer, they could just kind of ban it outright, right? It was easy to just say, okay, no more freon. We're gonna find something else to use.
Yeah,
But
because
with carbon,
freon
obviously,
is
you
not
can't ban it outright.
freon is not
You got to
essential.
regulate it. Yeah, exactly. So with carbon, the only way to do it is have some kind of worldwide cost, and for that you need a worldwide collection agency. You need worldwide taxes, which we've never done before. It's all based on donations to the UN or donations to the Vatican or donations to some worldwide group. But we've never had a worldwide group be able to impose a tax or a cost, and that's the revolutionary part of it, that we're talking about here. And I think it's necessary. I think we have to push it somehow. I don't know whether it'll be 5 years or 10 years before we get there, but I hope sooner rather than later, and I hope things like this will really push the message that we have to have this in order to solve this global problem. Otherwise, you'll keep beating around the bush and hoping volunteers to do it, hoping that invisible hand will eventually push us there. And it's working to some extent, but I just don't think it's fast enough, and I don't think fair enough to expect some people to just do it voluntarily and let other
Yeah,
corporations or countries continue to pollute.
I think one of the big problems is that the main biggest countries, like biggest countries with the biggest militaries, who
Yeah,
usually are the ones who are sort of backing the world order, that could like
yeah,
create enough push for countries to accept it,
yeah.
are the ones that are the most against it. At least some elements
Problematic.
in those countries, like you
Yeah,
have like U.S., China, and Russia, are not like jumping on like this kind of problem. Like we definitely need to do is like global some sort of
yeah,
regulations. I
yeah. How
think the
much?
most amenable is European Union, but the
Yeah,
problem is like if European Union fixes it 100% for itself, that still leaves like a 60% of the problem at least
yeah,
happening in the world. So that wouldn't be sufficient.
yeah. And the worst part is if they sacrifice so much effort and money and time into fixing the problem, while all these other countries are essentially getting fat and rich off of their pollution, then it's just more of a burden on the European Union. And it's got to be fair. We've got to be working on this together. We can't just expect any one country to do the grunt of it. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the third world countries to help lift them up a little bit too, and get them the newer technology leaps that they need to do it in a good way.